The old man shuffled through the glass doors of the towering corporate building. His clothes were wrinkled, his shoes scuffed, and his face lined with years of hardship. He hesitated in the grand lobby, gazing up at the massive chandeliers and polished marble floors. Employees rushed past him, each one too busy to notice his presence. He took a slow step forward. The receptionist, a young woman with sharp eyes, barely looked up from her computer. "Sir, this is a private building. You can't just walk in." "I just need to speak to someone," the old man said, his voice hoarse. "I won't take much of their time." The receptionist sighed, tapping her nails against the desk. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but—" "Then I can't help you." She pointed to the exit. "Please leave before security is called." The old man frowned but didn't argue. Instead, he turned his gaze toward the employees waiting for the elevator. He approached a well-dressed businessman holding a leather briefcase. "Excuse me, sir," the old man said softly. "Could you help me find someone in this company?" The businessman's eyes flickered over him, a flash of irritation on his face. "I don't have time for this," he muttered, stepping away. The old man tried again with another employee, this time a woman in a navy blue suit. "Miss, Not interested," she cut in before he could finish, her heels clicking against the floor as she walked away. The old man sighed, gripping his tattered coat. It was clear no one had the patience for him. He was invisible. Almost. A janitor, pushing a mop across the floor, paused and glanced at him. "You okay, old man?" he asked. The old man nodded. "Just looking for someone." The janitor shrugged. "This place is full of important people. Don't let them push you around." Then he resumed his work, as if the conversation was nothing unusual. Moments later, a young intern carrying a stack of files nearly bumped into the old man. Instead of brushing past him like the others, the intern stopped. "Oh. I'm sorry, sir. Are you lost?" The old man nodded slowly. "I suppose I am." The intern hesitated, then smiled. "Well, I can help. Who are you looking for?" Before the old man could answer, a security guard approached. "Sir, I've received complaints. You need to leave." The intern frowned. "Wait, he's not causing any trouble." "That's not the point," the guard said, stepping closer. "Company policy, no loitering." The old man met the security guard's eyes, but he didn't argue. Instead, he turned and slowly walked toward the exit. As he reached the door, he glanced back once more. The receptionist was already busy with another call. The businessman and the woman in the navy blue suit had vanished into the elevator. No one cared. No one except the janitor and the intern. The old man smiled faintly. They had no idea who he really was. The old man stepped outside into the cold air, but he didn't go far. Instead, he stood near the glass windows of the towering corporate building, watching the employees inside. They were too preoccupied with their own world to notice him. Phones rang, coffee cups clinked, people moved like machines, focused on their tasks, unaware that their lives were about to change. Slowly, the old man reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a sleek black phone. He pressed a single button. Inside the office, in a dimly lit security room, multiple screens flickered to life. Every inch of the building, the lobby, the hallways, even individual offices, was now under surveillance. But this wasn't just an ordinary security feed. Every person who had interacted with the old man was being watched closely. Their words, their reactions, their choices, all recorded. The test had begun. Inside the building, the receptionist leaned back in her chair, sighing. "Honestly, the nerve of some people," she muttered to a coworker. "Did you see that old man? Probably looking for a handout." The coworker chuckled. "You handled it well. You know how these people can be. Unbeknownst to them, their words were being transmitted to a private office on the top floor. Someone was listening. Someone who had planned this entire event. Meanwhile, in the employee lounge, the young intern was still thinking about the old man. He turned to the janitor, who was filling a mop bucket. "Did you see that old guy earlier?" the intern asked. The janitor nodded. "Yeah. Seemed lost. I tried to help him, but security kicked him out." The intern frowned. "I don't think that was right." The janitor shrugged. "That's how this place works, kid. People here only care about those with money or power. If you don't have either, you're invisible." The intern thought about that for a moment. Then, making a decision, he grabbed his coat. "Where are you going?" the janitor asked. "I'll be right back," the intern said, heading toward the door. Outside, the old man was still standing near the building's entrance, watching. A few moments later, he heard footsteps. The young intern had come after him. "Sir," the intern said, slightly out of breath. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for how you were treated. If you need help, I can try to find someone." The old man studied him for a moment. "Why?" The intern hesitated. "Because it's the right thing to do." A small smile crossed the old man's face. "Thank you," he said simply. Just then, the doors of the building opened again. This time, it was one of the senior managers. He was speaking to the security guard, laughing as he pointed in the old man's direction. "Still here?" the manager scoffed. "Unbelievable. Some people don't get the message." The intern turned, his face tightening in anger. The old man just nodded, his expression unreadable. "Don't worry," he murmured. "I'll be back soon." And with that, he walked away, leaving behind an office full of people who had no idea what was coming next. The next morning, the office hummed with its usual energy, phones ringing, employees rushing to their desks, meetings in progress. No one thought twice about the old man from yesterday. To them, he was a forgotten moment, nothing more than a brief disturbance in their structured corporate world. But he hadn't forgotten them. Inside the top-floor office, the CEO sat behind his desk, reviewing the footage from the hidden cameras. He watched as the receptionist dismissed him without a second thought. He saw the senior managers laugh as they mocked his appearance. He studied the businessman and the woman in the navy blue suit as they ignored him. Then, he paused the screen. There they were, the janitor and the young intern. The only two who had shown him kindness. He leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping against the desk. This was exactly why he had devised this test in the first place. A company wasn't just built on skills and resumes. It was built on character. And today, he would find out just how much character his employees truly had. Down in the lobby, the receptionist was sipping her morning coffee when a black luxury car pulled up in front of the building. The door opened, and out stepped a man in a tailored suit, his presence commanding. He walked with confidence, his posture straight, his sharp eyes scanning the office. The receptionist's eyes widened. It was the CEO. She straightened immediately, smoothing her blouse and forcing a bright smile. "Good morning, sir," she chirped, her voice suddenly sweet. "Welcome back." He didn't respond. He simply walked past her. As he stepped into the main office, employees straightened in their seats, suddenly alert. The atmosphere shifted, the casual chatter replaced by a quiet nervousness. Senior managers quickly adjusted their ties, trying to look busy. The CEO didn't acknowledge them. Instead, he walked straight to the young intern's desk. The intern looked up, startled. "Yes, sir." The CEO studied him for a moment before speaking. "Come with me." The office fell silent as the intern followed the CEO toward the boardroom. Some employees whispered, wondering what was going on. A few exchanged smirks, assuming the intern was about to be reprimanded. Minutes later, the CEO and the intern sat across from each other in the conference room. "You approached an old man outside our building yesterday," the CEO said. His voice was calm but firm. The intern swallowed. "Yes, sir." "Why?" The intern hesitated. "Because he needed help. And yet, no one else helped him. Not the receptionist. Not the managers." "Why did you?" The intern looked down, his hands tightening. "I don't know, sir. It just felt wrong to ignore him." The CEO nodded slowly. "You're right. It was wrong." The intern's eyes widened slightly. The CEO leaned forward. "I was that old man." Silence. The intern's face paled. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. "I disguised myself to test my employees," the CEO continued. "And do you know what I found?" The intern shook his head, still too shocked to speak. The CEO's expression darkened. "I found arrogance. I found selfishness. I found people who value status more than humanity." The intern swallowed. But," the CEO interrupted, his voice softening, "I also found you." The intern blinked. "I saw how you treated me. You showed respect when no one else did. You treated me like a person, not an inconvenience. And for that," the CEO paused, then smiled slightly. "I want to reward you." The intern's breath hitched. "Reward me?" The CEO nodded. "From today forward, you will no longer be an intern. You will be promoted." The intern gasped. "But, sir. I'm just." "You're exactly what this company needs," the CEO interrupted. "Someone who values people over power. Someone who doesn't judge others based on appearance. That's the kind of leader I want in my company." Tears welled in the intern's eyes. "Thank you, sir. I won't disappoint you. I know you won't." But while the intern was being lifted up, others were about to be brought down. The CEO's expression hardened. It was time to confront those who had failed the test. The CEO walked out of the boardroom with the young intern following closely behind. The office had fallen into an eerie silence. People whispered among themselves, trying to figure out why the CEO had suddenly taken an interest in an intern. But they wouldn't have to wonder for long. The CEO strode through the office with a quiet authority, his gaze sharp as he scanned the employees. He had seen their true colors. And now, it was time for them to see the consequences of their actions. His first stop. The receptionist. She straightened in her chair, forcing a bright smile as the CEO approached. "Sir. How can I help you?" He placed both hands on her desk and stared at her. "Do you remember the old man who came in yesterday?" Her smile faltered. "Old man? The one you dismissed?" His tone was calm but firm. The receptionist's throat tightened. Sir, you see. I thought he was unimportant," the CEO finished for her. She went silent. "I was that old man." Her face drained of color. The CEO continued, his voice even but heavy with meaning. "I watched you dismiss me like I was nothing. I watched you turn me away without a second thought. Is that how you treat people who don't fit your standards?" The receptionist stammered. "Sir, I didn't know it was you. If I had known." "That's the problem." His gaze pierced through her. "You shouldn't treat people with kindness just because they have power. You should treat them with kindness because it's the right thing to do." Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes. "Sir, I didn't mean to." "You will not be fired," the CEO said, cutting her off. "But you will undergo retraining. If I see this behavior again, you won't get a second chance. She nodded frantically, her hands trembling. The CEO didn't wait for a response. He was already moving. Next, he stopped by the senior manager's offices. The men and women who had laughed at him, ignored him, or dismissed him with arrogance. When they saw the CEO approaching, their postures stiffened. They exchanged nervous glances, realizing something was wrong. "You," the CEO said, pointing to the businessman who had brushed him off the day before. "In my office. Now." The man swallowed hard and followed without a word. Minutes later, he stood in front of the CEO's desk, sweat forming at his temples. The CEO leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "Tell me something," he said. "When an old man approached you in the lobby yesterday, why did you walk away?" The businessman licked his lips, struggling for an answer. "Sir, I thought he was a beggar. I didn't want to waste my time." The CEO nodded slowly. "And if I had been a potential business partner? A billionaire investor? Would you have acted differently?" The businessman hesitated, but the answer was obvious. The CEO sighed. "You are in a leadership position in this company. You make decisions that impact people's lives. And yet, you judged a man based solely on his appearance." His voice hardened. "That is not the kind of leadership I want in my company." The businessman paled. "Sir, please, You're fired." The businessman's mouth fell open. "Fired?" "Yes," the CEO said, standing up. "Not because you ignored an old man, but because you proved you lack the integrity this company needs." He gestured to the door. "Clean out your desk." The businessman opened his mouth to argue, but one look at the CEO's face told him it was useless. He turned and walked out, shoulders slumped. And he wasn't the only one. Over the next hour, the CEO called in each of the senior employees who had failed the test. Some were given warnings. Some were let go. But all of them left with one thing in common: regret. Meanwhile, downstairs, the janitor mopped the floor, humming a tune to himself. He had no idea that soon, his entire life was about to change. The CEO walked up to him and waited. When the janitor finally noticed, he blinked in surprise. "Oh, sir. Didn't see you there." The CEO smiled. "You're a hard worker." The janitor scratched his head. "Just doing my job, sir." The CEO studied him for a moment. "Yesterday, an old man came in. Do you remember?" The janitor nodded. "Yeah, poor guy looked lost." "You spoke to him?" The janitor shrugged. "Didn't seem right to ignore him." The CEO's smile grew. "How long have you worked here?" 20 years, the janitor said, a hint of pride in his voice. "Best I could do with no fancy degrees." The CEO's expression turned thoughtful. "How would you feel about a change?" The janitor frowned. "A change? I've seen how you treat people. How you handle situations with honesty and kindness. This company needs more people like you." The janitor looked confused. "I don't follow." The CEO grinned. "What if I told you I wanted to promote you?" The janitor froze. "Promote me?" "Yes," the CEO said. "To a management position. You may not have a degree, but you have something more important: character." The janitor's eyes widened. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "Say yes," the CEO replied. The air inside the office had shifted. Whispers filled the halls. Employees walked with uncertainty, their minds replaying yesterday's events like a broken record. The CEO's unexpected actions had turned everything upside down. Some had been fired, some demoted, and some, like the intern and the janitor, had been rewarded beyond their imagination. But it wasn't over yet. The CEO wasn't just testing his employees for one day. He wanted to see if people could truly change when given a second chance. At 9 a.m. sharp, the CEO walked into the main office. Every head turned, every pair of eyes tracked his movements. He stopped at the receptionist's desk. She straightened, her hands folded tightly together. "Good morning, sir," she said, her voice quieter than usual. The CEO studied her carefully. "Tell me," he said. "If a stranger walked in today, dressed like an ordinary man, how would you treat him?" Her lips pressed together. I would treat him with respect." The CEO raised an eyebrow. "Because you learned a lesson? Or because you're afraid of losing your job?" Her throat tightened. She looked down for a moment before meeting his gaze again. "Because I was wrong," she admitted. "And I want to do better." The CEO watched her for a few seconds, then nodded. "We'll see." He moved on. In the break room, a group of employees sat in hushed conversation. The recent firings had sent shockwaves through the company. Some were shaken. Others were angry. "This is ridiculous," one manager muttered. "Firing people over something like this? Who does he think he is?" A woman beside him scoffed. "Yeah. So what if we ignored some old man? It's not like that's part of our job." A voice from behind them interrupted. "So you still don't get it?" They turned. The young intern stood in the doorway, arms crossed. The manager scowled. "Oh, look. The CEO's new golden boy." A long pause. Then, slowly, the janitor's lips curled into the biggest smile he'd ever worn. "Yes, sir." The CEO nodded. "Good. You start next week." As he walked away, the janitor stood in stunned silence, his heart pounding. Meanwhile, the entire office buzzed with whispered conversations. Some employees had been fired. Others had been demoted. But one thing was clear. Everything had changed. And it wasn't over yet. The intern ignored the jab. "You're upset because you got caught," he said. "But what if that old man really needed help? What if he wasn't our CEO in disguise? Would you still say it wasn't your job to treat him like a person?" The manager's face darkened. He had no answer. The intern shook his head. "That's why you failed the test." He walked away, leaving behind an uncomfortable silence. Meanwhile, in the CEO's office, a new problem had surfaced. The security guard, one of the first to dismiss the old man, stood nervously in front of the CEO's desk. His hands clenched into fists, his face tense. "I just wanted to say something," the guard finally spoke. "I messed up, sir." The CEO sat back, waiting. "I judged you," the guard admitted. "I didn't even think twice. Just assumed you didn't belong. I was wrong." He exhaled. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I regret it." The CEO watched him for a long moment. "People make mistakes," he said finally. "The real test is whether you learn from them." The guard swallowed hard. "I will, sir." The CEO nodded. "Good. Then you still have a job here." The guard's eyes widened. "I do?" "For now," the CEO said. "But I'll be watching." The guard straightened. "You won't regret it." By the end of the day, something had changed in the office. People weren't just working. They were thinking. Some reflected on their mistakes. Some struggled with their guilt. And some refused to change at all. But one thing was clear, this company would never be the same again. And tomorrow, the CEO had one final lesson to teach. The next morning, the office was unusually quiet. Employees sat at their desks, more focused than usual, their conversations hushed. The weight of the CEO's secret test still lingered in the air. Some had passed. Others had been fired. And a few were still unsure where they stood. At precisely 9 a.m., the CEO called for a company-wide meeting. Employees shuffled into the grand conference room, taking their seats. The air was thick with anticipation. The CEO stood at the front, hands clasped, his expression unreadable. Then, without warning, the projector screen behind him flickered to life. Security footage began to play. Gasps rippled through the room as they watched the events from 2 days ago unfold. The video showed the old man, the disguised CEO, walking through the lobby, asking for help. The receptionist dismissing him. The businessmen brushing past him. The senior managers mocking him. Then, the footage changed. It showed the janitor pausing to talk to the old man, treating him with kindness. It showed the young intern running after him, offering to help. And it showed the security guard, ignoring him at first, but later standing before the CEO, admitting his mistake. When the video ended, silence filled the room. The CEO turned to face his employees. This, he said, his voice calm but firm, was a test. Some people looked away, their faces burning with embarrassment. Others sat frozen, their jaws clenched. I did not do this to humiliate you, the CEO continued. I did this to reveal the kind of company we've become. One where status matters more than humanity. Where kindness is a rare currency. His gaze swept across the room. That is not the company I built. He took a step forward, folding his hands. Leadership is not just about profit. It's about integrity. And what I saw in this test tells me that some of you do not belong here. A heavy silence fell over the room. The CEO continued, his tone measured. I believe in second chances. Some of you failed this test, but you have shown remorse. You will be given a chance to prove yourselves. Others, he paused, have made it clear they will not change. His eyes landed on a few individuals, the businessman who had been fired, a few managers who had laughed at the old man, the receptionist who had dismissed him without thought. For those who still believe they did nothing wrong, I will make this easy for you, the CEO said. You are free to leave. The tension in the room thickened. One of the senior managers scoffed. This is ridiculous. You're firing people over something that has nothing to do with their work? The CEO's expression remained calm. How you treat people when you think no one is watching tells me everything I need to know about you. The manager clenched his jaw but said nothing. Another employee, an executive in a crisp navy suit, stood up and grabbed his briefcase. This is a waste of time, he muttered, walking toward the door. A few others followed him, their pride unwilling to let them admit their mistakes. As the doors shut behind them, the CEO looked at the remaining employees. The rest of you, he said, have a choice. You can learn from this. You can change. But if I ever see this kind of behavior again, you won't get another warning. A deep silence settled over the room. Then, unexpectedly, the receptionist stood. Her voice was quiet but steady. I was wrong. She took a deep breath, hands trembling. I let my own assumptions cloud my judgment. I won't make that mistake again. The CEO studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Slowly, more employees stood. Some apologized. Some simply bowed their heads, realizing the weight of their actions. The CEO exhaled, his gaze softening. Change starts today. As the meeting ended and employees filed out, whispers filled the air. Some carried regret. Others carried determination. But one thing was certain, this company was no longer the same. And tomorrow, the CEO had one final lesson left to give. Some people looked away, their faces burning with embarrassment. Others sat frozen, their jaws clenched. "I did not do this to humiliate you," the CEO continued. "I did this to reveal the kind of company we've become. One where status matters more than humanity. Where kindness is a rare currency." His gaze swept across the room. "That is not the company I built." He took a step forward, folding his hands. "Leadership is not just about profit. It's about integrity. And what I saw in this test tells me that some of you do not belong here." A heavy silence fell over the room. The CEO continued, his tone measured. "I believe in second chances. Some of you failed this test, but you have shown remorse. You will be given a chance to prove yourselves. Others," he paused, "have made it clear they will not change." His eyes landed on a few individuals, the businessman who had been fired, a few managers who had laughed at the old man, the receptionist who had dismissed him without thought. "For those who still believe they did nothing wrong, I will make this easy for you," the CEO said. "You are free to leave." The tension in the room thickened. One of the senior managers scoffed. "This is ridiculous. You're firing people over something that has nothing to do with their work?" The CEO's expression remained calm. "How you treat people when you think no one is watching tells me everything I need to know about you." The manager clenched his jaw but said nothing. Another employee, an executive in a crisp navy suit, stood up and grabbed his briefcase. "This is a waste of time," he muttered, walking toward the door. A few others followed him, their pride unwilling to let them admit their mistakes. As the doors shut behind them, the CEO looked at the remaining employees. "The rest of you," he said, "have a choice. You can learn from this. You can change. But if I ever see this kind of behavior again, you won't get another warning." A deep silence settled over the room. Then, unexpectedly, the receptionist stood. Her voice was quiet but steady. "I was wrong." She took a deep breath, hands trembling. "I let my own assumptions cloud my judgment. I won't make that mistake again." The CEO studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Slowly, more employees stood. Some apologized. Some simply bowed their heads, realizing the weight of their actions. The CEO exhaled, his gaze softening. "Change starts today." As the meeting ended and employees filed out, whispers filled the air. Some carried regret. Others carried determination. But one thing was certain, this company was no longer the same. And tomorrow, the CEO had one final lesson left to give.